Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. All the characters in this story are over 18 years old. Greg tells me, I think there are 100 ways to find out what your spouse is cheating on or is going to change. The most obvious way is to go into your bedroom and find some asshole pushing her into the mattress. My suspicions about Holly's possible infidelity arose in a less obvious way. Saturday turned out to be unusually cold. One of my chores was to install winter tires on Holly's Escape. I smiled as I got into her car. The heated driver's seat was turned on at 3. I turned it off before going to the local tire repair shop and waited for them to change the tires. When I got home, Holly was dressed and waiting for me. Greg, I need to go to the mall. Do you need anything? Some men might have worried when they heard these words, because it means that credit cards are about to be seriously damaged. But Holly earns money herself, never overspends, and best of all, it meant that I could relax in front of the TV and watch Saturday football. Holly didn't let me relax. Try not to spend all day in front of the TV. Children need some fatherly time. All right, my love. 3 hours later, Holly returned to the house with one Nordstrom's bag. Not bad for 3 hours. I thought to myself, then I remembered something. Baby, I left my sunglasses in your car. You forgot them. I put them in the console. I went to her car to get sunglasses. When I reached out to take them, I couldn't help but notice that the seat heating on her side had returned to 3. But why was there 2 on the passenger side? When I returned to the house, I found Holly in the kitchen. Did you go shopping with anyone today? Holly made a strange face and waited a second before answering, no. Why are you asking? Damn, she must have just lied to me. For no reason. I just thought you'd been away for a while and wondered if you'd had lunch with someone. Holly turned away, pretending to be doing something at the sink when she answered. No, I was all alone. The passenger side heater, set to 2, became the catalyst for my suspicions. I told Holly that I was going to go down to my basement to cross off a few items from her to-do list. The silence in my basement gave me time to think. It took half an hour of solitude and reflection to realize that lately all the signs have been there. He comes home from work and does not share the details of his day, forgetfulness related to our home and family, harshness towards me because of the smallest details. Yes, the signs were there. How did I recognize the signs of cheating on my spouse? Because I've come across this before. My first marriage broke up because of infidelity, but not my wife. I was the traitor. I was the one who came home late or worked on weekends. I forgot to bring home the groceries from the list that Carol, my first wife, gave me this morning. I was the one who attached great importance to the little things and started arguments over them. My affair with a colleague was in its 4th month when Carol found out about it. The novel began in one of the most common ways. A little flirting, friendly dinners with general discussions of our partners and their shortcomings. It wasn't long before friendship turned into intimacy. Carol trusted me and would never have suspected anything if my cheating friend's husband hadn't told Carol by showing her the photos his private investigator took of us. Carol was devastated, saying she couldn't believe anyone could betray her trust in such a way. Despite my vow to remain faithful for the rest of our lives, she filed for divorce. Why should I believe you? 2 years ago, you swore to leave everyone else. Look how it turned out. 3 months later, I was single again. The thing is, I really loved Carol. My novel was a stupid macho nonsense that led me into the abyss. I was kidding myself that it was just a friendship, that what I shared with another woman wouldn't affect my relationship with Carol. In other words, I was dumb, like millions of other dumb traitors. A year after the divorce, I moved to the other side of the country, from Atlanta to Seattle. 2 years later, I met Holly, courted her, and got married. I told her about my first marriage, but I didn't admit to adultery. I just said that my first wife couldn't come to terms with my, then, immaturity. Not exactly a lie, just not the whole truth. Why arouse suspicion? I would have learned my lesson and would never cheat again. Holly and I were married for 6 years. We had 2 beautiful children when the temptation came again. My job required me to attend trainings every 6 months. For 3 days, 20 operational staff met at our headquarters in Dallas twice a year. Most of the same 20 people attended each session, and eventually we got closer. A friendship was formed, and there were even hints of a couple of affairs. One of our group was a woman from the Cleveland office. Karen Bates was a beautiful single woman in her early 30s who seemed to enjoy my company. We talked during breaks and lunches. One night, it was probably my fourth class in Dallas. She asked if I would join some of them for dinner. It was a small group of 7 people. What harm can it do? It was a fun company. After dinner, we found ourselves in a bar where there was a dance floor and a band was playing. I danced with Karen and 2 other women from the group. After about a few hours, I looked at my watch. It was midnight in Dallas and 10 o'clock in Seattle. I stormed out of the bar without saying goodbye to anyone. On my way back to the hotel, I called Holly from my cell phone. A sleepy Holly answered on the second ring. "Holly, this is Greg. Did I wake you up?" "It's all right, baby. I'm just glad you called. I'm sorry it's so late. I went out to dinner and had a few drinks with the others. I wanted to call you to tell you that I love you. I'm walking back to the hotel now. Should I call you when I get to the room?" "No, baby. I'm just glad to hear your voice. How was your day?" "Too long, too long. I'm leaving tomorrow at 3. I'll land at Seattle Airport at 5:30 and be home for a late dinner. I miss you. I miss you too. Children too. Fly safely. I can't wait to meet you." As much as I wanted to stay on the phone, I didn't want to keep Holly. She held the defense at home. I took care of the children and went to work. It can tire a person out, and I wanted her to rest for my return home tomorrow. We hung up the phone, exchanging "I love you" with each other as soon as I entered the hotel. I opened the door to my hotel room, sat on the bed, and collapsed. God, it was close. Another glass and another dance with Karen. One thing saved me. I suddenly realized all the warning bells from the novel that ruined my first marriage. That night, I swore I wouldn't ruin my marriage with Holly like I did with Carol. For the next 4 years, I was able to keep my promise. I avoided Karen Bates and several other temptations I encountered. With a renewed sense of direction, I climbed the stairs and entered our kitchen. Our 2 children, Sal and Barb, were sitting at the kitchen table chatting with their mother while she was cooking dinner. It was worth fighting for, but I needed to know how far Holly had come. Has she already crossed the line in the sand? Was she in love with this guy? Where was the border? I felt Holly's eyes on me when I entered the room and took a beer out of the fridge. I sat down between the children and joined the conversation. Holly looked at the 3 of us and smiled. At that moment, I realized that she loved me. So why the hell would she endanger our family? Or did I hurry up? I tried my best to appear normal and ignorant throughout the weekend. We even made love on Sunday morning before going to Sunday service. On Monday morning, I asked my boss for some free time to attend to personal matters. He was kind enough to provide it to me without asking too much. I made several calls and made an appointment with the investigator. On Monday afternoon, I was sitting in the waiting room of the Sullivan Investigations Department, waiting to meet Jake Sullivan. I entered his office when the secretary announced me. Jake was a big man who reminded me of a TV show my dad used to watch when I was a kid. Dad had a full set of videotapes starring a full actor with a mustache. What was his name? Frank Conrad or something like that. Jake saw the look on my face, my blank stare, and laughed. It was Frank Cannon, starring William Conrad. That's what you're trying to remember, right? I can't read minds. They often look at me the same way questioningly. My wife says I should shave off my mustache, but it's more fun that way. Jake and I exchanged a few more pleasantries and got down to business. If what you told me is true, it won't take more than a week. We will conduct a small observation by a team of 2 people. Let's gather everything you need to make some decisions. The amount should not exceed $10,000. If you agree, Sheila needs to sign a contract, and I'll have 2 operatives do it by Wednesday. $10,000 sounded cool, but all things considered, it might be cheap in the long run. I agreed, shook Jake's hand, and signed the contract at his secretary's desk. On Friday evening, I returned to the Sullivan Investigation Department with bated breath. "Greg, I have good news and bad news." "Heck, the good news is that your wife hasn't gone to bed with this Derek yet. By the way, this asshole's name is Derek Turner. Derek Turner is Holly's boss. I met him 3 or 4 times at Holly's work events. I've never had a high opinion of this guy, and I had the feeling he thought even less of me. He always spoke condescendingly to me. I had to admit that he was a handsome man, about our age, and kept himself in shape. As this flashed through my mind, I noticed that Jake was watching me waiting. Damn it, this guy was in the right business. Astute, waited until I was ready to hear the next part. I nodded my head, and he continued. The bad news is that she may be planning to sleep with him soon. He asked her to join him at a work-related conference outside the city in 3 weeks. She hasn't committed herself, but she's definitely on the verge. 2 of my operatives followed them both on Wednesday and Thursday. One was sitting next to them at the diner on Wednesday, the other was watching on Thursday. None of the operatives were seen, I can assure you. There were no outward signs of affection on both days. No handshakes, kisses, anything physical. And we were able to record conversations on both days. Operatives carry special bags with parabolic microphones. I'll give you both tapes so you can listen to them yourself. There is some background noise. You may have to listen to it a few times to get used to it and hear everything that was said. I took the tapes, actually 2 CDs, from Jake and treated them as if they were poison. That's not all. Based on what we heard on Wednesday, I followed Turner after work on Wednesday and Thursday evenings. On Wednesday, he went straight to his home, and on Thursday, he left work and met another man at the Metropolitan Grill Bar. They didn't seem to care that they were in a public place. I couldn't hear the whole conversation, but I caught enough to know that your wife wasn't their first target. Based on what I heard, I confirmed this morning that the other man is James Young. Turner reports to Young. It looks like one of the previous victims was Karen Johnson. Your wife is the replacement for this Miss Johnson. Young asked Turner how it was going and gave him a dressing down when Turner told him she was resisting. Turner said he felt he would succeed as soon as she went on this business trip with him. I thought a little alcohol and dancing would overcome her restraint. He even confirmed something that we have on one of the lunch break recordings, that Turner approached your wife with the possibility of a career promotion in the future if she participates in the program. Jake waited a few more seconds while I digested it all. He offered me a cup of coffee from the coffee pot on his desk. I refused, already too worked up. Jake continued. I can't stand such jerks. I wrote my notes right after their conversation. The conversation took place in a public place, and there is no need to rely on confidentiality. My notes can be used in a civil lawsuit against these two and the company. If you need me, I will testify in the trial record and in court. I'll charge you less than usual, just to nail these assholes. The costs to date are almost half of my initial estimate. If you need your wife to be watched this weekend, it will probably consume the rest of your deposit. I only thought about it for a second. No, I'll listen to the recordings. But if what you've told me is all that's happened so far, maybe we can get over it. I'll talk to her tomorrow. There's no point in dragging it out. Unless she surprises me. She will agree to a consultation, and it should help. I need to think about the lawsuit. Right now, I'm inclined to agree that these two assholes should get hurt. Jake shook my hand. Good luck. Let me know if you need anything else. We'll settle up next week, just in case. I went home early and listened to the CDs on my computer. Derek Turner spent most of both lunches trying to please Holly. He spent some time trying to convince Holly that I must have cheated on her when I attended training in Dallas. I was pleased to hear how Holly defended me when Turner spoke ill of me. He tried to convince her that it was in her best interest to go to the next conference with him. It would be good for her career. He was going to get a promotion soon, and Holly had a great chance to get his job when that happened. Turner took the time to compliment Holly's looks, intelligence, and abilities. When he said it would be great to meet her in a more private setting, somewhere away from the daily routine, and find out if their feelings for each other were more than just friendship, Holly interrupted him, saying it was time to return to the office. That was the end of the recording made on Thursday. I felt that Holly was resisting, but succumbing to temptation. The attraction was understandable. I've been like this before and I know it happens. If someone had intervened before my affair, my first marriage might have survived. It's time to step in to save my second marriage. I called Holly's parents to ask if they could look after the kids this weekend. Holly's mom was glad of the opportunity. I picked up Sal and Barb from school, drove home with them to pack their bags, and took them to their grandparents to be pampered for 2 days. Holly called me at 5 to ask if she could come home a little later and have a drink with some of her colleagues. She was stunned when I told her, "No, come straight home. Now we need to discuss something." Can it wait? Not if you want to be married to me after this weekend. What are you talking about? I'm talking about a divorce if you're not home in the next half hour. Greg. Why are you talking about a divorce? What's happening? Holly, come home. I'm not going to discuss this over the phone. I hung up the phone. 26 minutes later, Holly walked through the door. She looked like she was crying. Greg, what about the divorce? Where are Sal and Barbara? Your parents have them. Now tell me about your affair with Derek Turner. I don't think I could have surprised Holly more if I had punched her in the nose. The effect was almost the same. Her eyes widened, and she stammered until she said the words, "I've never cheated on you." I took a chance and exposed her bluff. There are other types of treason. Just because you may not have made love to him, yet doesn't mean you haven't cheated. Now tell me about last Saturday night. Holly froze. We didn't do anything, just talked. I swear to you. Why on Saturday? Don't you two talk often enough at work and during lunch together? Was I followed? You can't change the subject. Tell me about your meeting on Saturday. I picked up Derek at his apartment. We went shopping and had lunch. I dropped him off at his house. He invited me in, but I said no and returned home. No kissing, no hugging, no touching. He tried to kiss me when he got out of the car. I turned my head and he kissed me on the cheek. I swear, that's it. So he went shopping with you. What did you buy? Holly looked scared now. A dress and something else. Stay here. I ran upstairs and looked in the closet in her bedroom. The Nordstrom bag was half hidden behind her hanging pantsuits. Inside the bag was a small black dress, a pair of high-heeled shoes, and, worst of all, snow-white silk underwear. I went downstairs gritting my teeth. What is it for? Holly covered her face with her hands. She's been crying since I left the room. Derek made me buy a dress and heels in case he convinced me to go to a conference with him next month. If I don't go to the conference, they're for you to invite me somewhere. And the underwear? Holly put her head in her hands again and sobbed. I'm sorry. He bought me this. What were you going to do? I don't know, but I swear I didn't do anything to him. Nothing physical, but I couldn't finish. Are you going to divorce me? Depends on whether you want to stay married to me. Are you ready to end this shit with Turner? Yes, I want to be your wife. I've never doubted it, and neither should you. And yes, I never want to be alone with Derek again. Holly got up from her chair and came over to me. She sat on my lap and buried her head in my chest. I'm so sorry. Please don't hate me. I thought about throwing her off my lap, but I couldn't. I don't hate you, but that will change if you destroy our family. Holly and I spent that evening and all of Saturday discussing how we were going to move on. If I had any doubts about Holly's love for me and our children, those doubts were dispelled by the time we picked up the children on Sunday morning. We decided to go to a family psychologist together. Holly needed to reconcile her love of family with the temptation to have an affair. Although it became obvious that Derek Turner was an experienced seducer of women. For example, Holly said that on Monday morning Turner asked if I had seen her purchases from Nordstrom. When she replied that I hadn't looked in the bag, he turned it into another insult. You see, your husband doesn't care about you. He probably has a girlfriend on the side. I told Holly that the only reason I didn't ask about her purchase was because I started to suspect something and needed time to think without losing my temper. I decided to tell Holly why my first marriage broke up and how close I was to screwing up a second time. I thought a counselor could help me tell Holly the truth in a way that wouldn't destroy my family. To be honest, our relationship could use a boost, and the right consultant could help us with that. We also decided to contact Holly's HR department and file an official complaint against Turner. Although Holly was outraged after reading Jake Sullivan's notes about the conversation between Turner and Young, everyone in the office was wondering what happened to Karen Johnson. She quit and left without saying a word to anyone. Holly resisted until we met with our consultant on Tuesday. She convinced Holly that it was the right thing to do. It's been a year since that weekend. Both Derek Turner and James Young were fired for good reason based on Holly's complaint, and after the HR director listened to the recordings, read Jake Sullivan's notes, and had a follow-up conversation with Jake. None of them received severance pay. They just quickly put me out the door. Holly heard that they threatened legal action, but backed off after they were threatened with counterclaims. Speaking of lawsuits, in a letter from our lawyer, Holly received a check for a good amount from the company, and nothing else was said after she signed the application. We might have been tempted to insist on this issue, but Holly's company did the right thing. They got rid of the scoundrels and quickly settled with her. The consultant really helped us to cope with our problems. Holly was surprised when she heard the real reason for the failure of my first marriage. She was hurt when, during our first session, I told her how close I was to cheating on her. The reason I decided to come clean was simple. Holly needed to know that she wasn't the only one who might succumb to temptation. Our marriage would have been stronger if she hadn't carried the burden of guilt. After all, neither of us had crossed the physical line, which made the emotional boundaries we crossed still devastating, but not unforgivable. I truly believe that Holly and I are happier now than we were in the first year of our marriage. Both children are doing great. It's probably easier to raise children when two adults who love each other are involved in parenting. Several important lessons have been learned. First, don't use another person to replace the emotional support you should receive from your spouse, especially when the other person has a reason to put up barriers between you and your spouse. It can start with friendly dinners, but often ends in bed. Secondly, if you are doing something that you are ashamed to tell your spouse about, most likely you should not do it. Thirdly, communication. Are you having problems with your spouse? Tell him about it. I'm not naive. There are marriages that will not save communication and information exchange, but if your marriage is worth saving, take the time to communicate. Anyway, these are my 2 cents, and they're worth every penny. End.